This is Andy Brown, publisher at Conundrum Press, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Andy Brown about the graphic novels planned for this year from Conundrum Press. Please like and subscribe to this website by hitting the subscribe button so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Andy Brown is the founding editor and publisher of Conundrum Press that began in 1996 amidst the political turmoil and cultural vibrancy of Montreal. Andy originally published chapbooks, short stories, novels, comics, and zine collections, but in 2010, he revised the output to exclusively publish literary graphic novels. Now, Conundrum Press is located in Nova Scotia, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. While Conundrum has published many award-winning comic artists, such as Meags Fitzgerald, Max de Reggie, Jillian Tamaki, Cole Pauls, Aimée de Jongh, Joe Ollmann, Sami Alwani, Michel Rabagliati, Dakota McFadzean, and Nina Bunjevac, the press also remains committed to discovering new voices in the graphic novel field. Conundrum Press operates with the financial support of the Canada Council for the Arts, the Province of Nova Scotia, and the Government of Canada. So without further ado, here's my chat with Andy Brown about the graphic novels planned for this year from Conundrum Press.
So, Andy Brown, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, you're welcome. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. We haven't chatted in a while, so it's good to catch up. And before I get going with all the questions, I would like to know, what are you reading today? What's on your bedside reading table?
Bedside reading table. Well, I mostly just read the comics that I am publishing, but I will talk about, but I'll give a shout out. I actually started reading a book. I got an expo zine, which happened in Montreal at the end of November. And a friend of mine, Kevin Kit Lowe, is a designer. He does a design company called Loki. And he's been involved in expo zine and the Montreal anarchist community for a long time. So he put out his first book of critical writing about graphic design called Design Against Design. And it's published by Set Margins, which is apparently a publishing company based in the Netherlands. So that is what I'm halfway through. It's great. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it does sound fascinating, that's for sure. Well, let's get talking about you and Conundrum Press. Sure. Can you tell me in 25 words or less,
yes.
What does Conundrum Press have in store for 2025?
Oh, my. Well, not in 25 words or less.
No, I'm joking.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, I today, actually, at my office, I was just packaging up my latest catalog, which I call Catazine, which is half catalog, half magazine, called Conundrum, an annual catazine of the comic arts, so for the 2025 edition. So I'm pretty full on the next year already. And so in the spring, there's going to be 4 main titles, and in the fall, there's 2. And then we're going to continue our Conundrum 25 series of 25 pocketbooks, single-story pocketbooks, graphics shorts. And so we're going to do 1 in the spring and finish up the whole series in the fall. And then in 2026 will be a big year because it's my 30th anniversary. So we'll do an anthology of all of the stories. So the book's coming out this spring. The big main, they're all big and they're all awesome books. But the 4 of them, what we call the lead title, is a book called Salt Green Death by a Swedish Vancouver artist named Katarina Thorsen, who I met at the Banff Center for the Arts, who was doing the visual narratives cohort. And I walked into her studio, and it looked like walking into like a forensic scientist's crime scene analysis. It was like,
wow.
strings and maps and drawings all over the walls. The entire room just looked like the inside of her brain. And I said, this is a person that I really want to work with. And so this is the book that came out of this. It's a nonfiction book about a Irish immigrant family to Vancouver in the 40s, and it tracks all of them, especially the main character who ends up going through a series of psychiatric hospitals in British Columbia. But the main thread throughout is James Joyce's Ulysses. So she's done a lot of work combining all of these narratives. So and the visuals are amazing. This is like breaking new ground for nonfiction in comics. And then there's a book called End Sickness by a Halifax artist named Sophia Alarcon, who I've met at various comic festivals because she self-published a book called End Sickness, which was nominated for some awards. It's short stories about eco-anxiety. So end sickness is a word that's been coined by Elizabeth Rush. That's like, motion sickness or seasickness. So it's end sickness. It's the anxiety over sort of the end of the world, the malaise that many people feel. But it's specifically related to climate change. So comics, but very witty, very colorful. So that's her first collection of short stories. We have a new book by Rick Trembles, who's an old-time Montreal punk and post-underground comic artist. His book is called Gesticulating Gentrification, and it's about his housing insecurity in Montreal through the 80s and 90s, and all the different punk bands he played in, and all the dives that he lived in, and his legal problems. And it's all done in a very sort of underground style, which if people know Rick Trembles, it's classic Rick. And this book has been blurred by Robert Crumb, who did the introduction to his last book. Rick has corresponded with Robert Crumb through their association with Weirdo. Rick was published in Weirdo in the 80s. So that's great. So he's called Rick a genius, basically, which is really nice for a publisher to have that on a book.
Oh, yeah.
I should also mention that Rick's father was Jack Tremblay, who did Crash Carson in the 40s. He was one of the whites, the Canadian whites. He was an artist in Canadian whites. So he supported Rick's family, middle-class upbringing in the suburbs of Montreal through his cartooning and illustration work. So that was sort of Rick's influence. And then he kind of took it into sort of more of an underground way, I guess. And then the fourth major book we're doing is by Dee Boyd, and it's called Den of Iniquity. And it's a follow-up, but it's kind of an independent book to her first book, which was called Chicken Rising. It's taken out of her diaries from the 70s as a child growing up in St. John, New Brunswick. So it's very sort of has a lot of interesting vernacular. So Chicken Rising was all kind of elementary school years and the sort of the dynamics of her family and friends. And then so this new book, Den of Iniquity, takes us through the middle school years. So kind of the, good girl, starts dating the bad boy and becomes a bad girl and this sort of thing. And, start drinking and smoking and going to parties. And what's really impressive about it is the characterization and the writing, because it's all coming right out of her diaries from the 70s. So it's really quite accurate and really wonderful. In the future, I think she's going to be working on one of her high school years, and so that it would be like a trilogy. And then the other spring title is the 22nd book in the Conundrum 25 series of pocketbooks called City Mouse by a Halifax artist from NASCAD who runs a cafe called Ramblers in Halifax. And she's lived in the Halifax, north end of Halifax her whole life. And so Halifax is the fastest growing city in Canada. It's being completely torn down and rebuilt with skyscrapers, which is something that the Maritimes has never experienced before. And it's completely radically changed. And so she's kind of a bit in shock about all this, having grown up there her whole life. And so that's sort of what this book is about. Yeah, so that's more than 25 words.
Well, that's quite a bit. I mean, there's a little bit of something for everybody there, I think, that covers a lot of ground, that's for sure. One of the things I noticed on your Instagram feed was something called a mini comic bursary for Black and Indigenous creators. I wonder if you could talk a wee bit about that.
Sure. Well, that's another thing I just sent out. So the deadline for the bursary is December 31st every year. So I just compiled all of the submissions for that and sent them to the jury today. So that's pretty exciting. So this was started back when during the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement was happening, and the protests in the States, and also at the same time, of course, they were the residential schools sort of being uncovered. History was always there, but more people were recognizing the history of residential schools in Canada. And there was a lot of social media talk, about making statements and things like that. And I just thought, well, I'm just going to put my money where my mouth is and have a bursary, $1,000 that I just give every year to an emerging artist, Black or Indigenous artist, who wants to make a mini comic. So we just basically, it's just through social media and word of mouth and, please submit. And it's pretty easy. It's just like submit I think it's 3 to 5 pages of work. And so what we've been doing is getting the previous winners, there's been 4 winners so far, to form the jury. So we have Black, Indigenous people on the jury. There's not me picking the winners. So this year, the jury members are 2 previous winners. So Hannah Louise won last year, so they're on the jury, and Jordana George out in BC won the year before, so they're on the jury, and then Cole Pauls from Vancouver is an artist that I've published, Indigenous artist who I've published quite a bit, is also on the jury. So so that will be announced. The winner will be announced, within a month or so. But it's just something I felt that I could do, because I get government funding, right, from the government of Canada, and it's just turning it around and using it for good, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the idea.
Yeah, it's very worthwhile, that's for sure. Bringing along new talent. Yeah, that's tremendous. Now, we've met up at a few occasions in 2024, and I'm wondering, I know it's a bit early, but do you have any plans to attend any festivals or conventions? Anything on the books right now?
Well, it's never too early because I have to plan all this stuff well.
Oh, yeah.
But, certainly the Montreal Comic Art Festival has really expanded, especially its Anglophone content. So I'm really excited about that. And I've been the last couple of years, it's really been a worthwhile festival for me to go to. And so last year I had a booth instead of just a table, and it really paid off. So I have a lot of hopes and dreams for that. And of course, I was based in Montreal for 20 years. So, I'm back in the neighborhood and lots of friends. So that's really great. And of course, the Quebecois comic artists and the whole scene there is just, otherworldly. I mean, it's just totally different than everywhere else. And just dipping my toe back in there, it's I publish a lot of translations from French artists, from Quebecois artists. So it's good to just keep meeting up with the publishers and the artists and seeing what they're doing. And many of them are, lifelong friends now too. So that Montreal Comic Art Festival is the end of May 24th or something like that. And then TCAF, the Toronto Comic Art Festival, just announced they were delayed. They have a new venue. So they just announced for first weekend of June. So that's very exciting. So they're going to be in the old Maple Leaf Gardens.
Yeah.
That's the new venue. So that'll be very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So those are always 2 really big ones. I'm hoping to, especially with Salt Green Death, because of the Irish connection, I've been in communication with the Dublin Comic Art Festival, which is called DCAF, whereas there's also a DCAF here in Dartmouth, in Halifax, and it's run by a comic shop there called Little Deer Comics in Dublin, which is quite popular. So it seems like a very small but well-organized and very supportive community in Dublin. And because this Salt Green Death has so much Irish content, we were thinking of taking Katerina over there for that. So that might be in April. And, I've applied to a few things. One of the things that I got into for sure, but doesn't happen until September, is the Helsinki Comic Art Festival.
Oh, wow.
Which happens in September. So we'll be there for that as well. Any Finns watching or listening, come on by. I've been to the Helsinki Festival before, many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, and I was very impressed. The community in Finland is completely unique in alternative comics and really vibrant, and everyone speaks English, of course. Cool. So English books can sell just as easy as anything else. So there's that in September. And yeah, I've just got fingers in pies and waiting to hear back. Everyone seems to be quite delayed this year, but those are some of the main ones. I do a lot of local stuff in the Maritimes. Like I moved out here about 15 years ago from Montreal, and it's a big difference from like Toronto to New York is like an 8-hour drive. Halifax to New York is like a 30-hour drive.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So
Yeah.
it's everything you have to fly to. So I've been really trying to, for, many reasons, shipping, environmental, just trying to support local meaning the Maritimes, which is like 5 or 6 hour drives, basically. So there's lots of festivals around here. So there's the one Decaf in Halifax, but there's also a festival as part of Sappy Fest, a music festival in Sackville, New Brunswick in the summer. Last year, there was the Halifax Art Book Festival, which was run by NASCAD graduates. And that was a huge success. That was really good. That was first time last year, so that's happening again this year. And then the Charlottetown Zine Fest is really, really well organized and really picking up in quality and attendance. So I'm driving to that one every year in November. So there's some local stuff too that's going on that I'm trying to attend.
That's a lot of stuff, I tell you. I'm just tired just hearing it.
Yeah,
But it
well,
sounds exciting, though.
a big part of Conundrum Press and many independent comics publishers, a big part of it's essentially an alternative distribution network, these comic art festivals. So it's a chance to not only to have artists present and signing their books and having a launch at a bookstore where you just read in front of people and maybe sign my books or something is very different than being at one of these festivals.
Oh, yeah.
Even being a special guest and being on panels. So it offers these great opportunities for not only marketing, but actual sales and actual distribution outside of bookstores and outside of kind of a more mainstream societal network. So it's one of the big advantages of publishing independent graphic novels as opposed to novels or nonfiction or something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Lots of opportunities there to discover new books and new creators.
Yeah,
I think those are
absolutely.
wonderful ideas.
It's a real community thing too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now I want to switch gears way off the map, so to speak. We're hearing AI more and more prominently in the news these days. So I wanted to get your company stance on when it comes to dealing with submissions that have AI used as part of the process. What is your company's stance on that?
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't even look at it. I officially don't really take submissions in the first place. But no, if anyone used AI, I just dismiss it immediately. I mean, that's really not anywhere even in the conversation for me. So
Yeah, no, I understand. I hear that, and I'm glad you got a line in the sand. So that's good. That's
oh,
good.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you've got a lot on the go with Conundrum Press. So with that in mind, where
Absolutely.
should people go online to find out more about Conundrum Press and the books that are coming out this year?
Well, a good start would be the website, conundrumpress.com. It's a fabulous website and all revamped, and it has e-commerce functions, so you can just order books right off the website. And all the books I've just mentioned that are coming up have not been printed yet. Some are at the printer, but all of them can be pre-ordered off the website. So in other words, you pay now and you get your book in the mail when it comes out immediately. You'd be the first to get it. So you could certainly do that. And then I have distribution throughout Canada and the US and the UK through bookstores. They're distributed through Raincoast Publishers Group Canada in Canada, and then through Consortium or Ingram in the United States, and Ingram International in the UK. So bookstores can order books, but to find out more information about them, certainly the conundrumpress.com website. I should also put in a shout out to the Emanata is the YA imprint that we have, and that's edited by Sal Soller, who does an amazing job. But we do only one book a year, and that is coming out in the fall. This year, the book will be by Vivi Partridge, and that'll be out in next fall. And the one this fall, the book that we just published, was by Marianne Boucher, and it was called Survival of the Goodest. So that would be a great one to check out as well. So it's an imprint of YA graphic novels. So that is also something I give a shout out to. So look out for that too.
Sounds good. Well, Andy, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you want to get across in this interview?
I just want to again mention it's a real honor and a joy and a pleasure to be able to publish, well, first of all, these amazing artists, but also to be working in a field of, the word graphic novel itself is so undefined. And I really like that as an advantage moving forward, just for, experiments in form and creativity and people just discovering their own voice, especially women, because comics have been such a male-dominated field for so long. Like if you look at my catalog for 2025, 80%, 8 out of 10 artists are women, or identify as women at least. So I feel that is a really important part of what I do and what, in general, this sort of niche, I guess, of publishing is really exciting right now because of the experimentation that's going on. And I don't mean experimentation I mean experimentation within a literary form, I guess is what I mean. And I come out of a literary background and as a writer and, studied a Master's of English. And so to see graphic novels as a literary form advancing so quickly, it's very exciting.
Thanks to Andy for the chat. You can discover more about Conundrum Press at conundrumpress.com and on Instagram at instagram.com/conundrumpress. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website so you can listen to the full conversations and discover more about creators' insights into creating comic books and graphic novels. I also encourage you to subscribe via the website so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media sites, and you're encouraged to send any and all feedback to john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2025.